Hello everybody, this is Tigitar here and welcome back to another part of Tigaria building. We're on part 11 here and this is where we go over the whole construction of Gridlock. So I do want to say, before you get too far along here, if you have not downloaded the world off the workshop and tried out Gridlock, I would definitely suggest you do so, because this will basically spoil the entire thing, slash, discuss all the mechanics and codes and everything like that. So if you haven't tried and you want to, definitely go ahead and go give it a shot. If you're interested, I'm hoping that it's a lot of fun, but unfortunately I have not gotten much, if any, test feedback, especially in regards to Gridlock specifically. So who knows, it could be like borderline impossible and extremely frustrating, or it could be fun. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there first. But as you are probably aware, Gridlock is the third of 3 mini games that I've constructed here within the world of Tigaria. And after finishing the biomes last time, the augmented biome builds as part of Tigaria, I thought that it would be a good idea to take a little break and pursue another mini game construction. So that's what I set out to do. So I found a big space of area underground that had enough room for it to mine out and everything. And then I got going. So my initial thought for this minigame was something to do with parkour, perhaps. And that initial idea kind of evolved into a parkour involving puzzle adventure escape room type thing. So as you can kind of see, it's starting to take shape. Every once in a while you'll see a snippet of the map here view, but basically my idea ended up being to build a big grid of cubicles, of these square chambers, and in each chamber would be a unique challenge that the player was required to overcome in order to continue through. So in addition to each chamber having its own challenges, each one would lead to another chamber or split off into multiple different directions and become overall basically a puzzle chamber maze that the player would have to solve puzzles, overcome challenges, parkour, and other things, and eventually figure out a way to make it through all of the rooms and escape, basically, to the final exit point. Which, I guess now that I think about it, I didn't really build a final exit point. What I did is I broke it down into 4 different segments where, as you progress through your exploration of the game, you will discover along the way 4 different sort of checkpoint victory chambers, I guess. So there's basically 4 levels that progress through as you explore and that you will complete as you do the game. So the winning the game actually just means that you made it to the 4th victory chamber is what it is. But anyway, it started out with just this. Here you can see it kind of well now. I got this 7x7 grid of boxes in place. Before too long, I did want to get my teleporter set up as well, so that's what I'm doing here. I went ahead and got the teleporter for the entrance to the game set up, and that would quickly allow me to travel back and forth for building purposes. On top of having the universal pylon available, I figured it would be worthwhile to get the teleporter set up sooner rather than later. So I went ahead and did that. And at this point, I think I'm not totally sure if I think I just start kind of prototyping ideas and brainstorming for the very first room that one would explore, basically. And so I do a little bit of preliminary testing on this, and do some laying out of the chamber. And then before long, though, I did have to basically take a pause, overview the whole grid, and decide in what order I would try to build the progression. How would the pathway actually appear in throughout the whole game? And basically, I had to decide what direction to go through to get through the whole game, and include every chamber as its own unique challenge. So I basically was just figured out a plan of progression, and then started building in the puzzles / challenges to allow for that specific direction of exploration if completed. So for the very first chamber, you simply go towards the right from the start, and you have to make that simple jump, which, I mean, it is a simple jump, but it's on the limits of the farthest that you can jump without accessories and all. So it's not exactly super easy, but it's simple. And then for the second level, I kept with the theme of parkour, but I added in some timers and jump timing with switches on these various platforms. So what I wanted to do was basically require the player to flip a switch to start a timer, and then you have to jump onto a platform, and while you're there, you only have a very brief amount of time before the platform deactivates again, and in that amount of time you have to flip the correct switch that activates the next platform, which you can then jump on, and then flip the switch from that platform to the third, and from that one to the last. And if you make it onto the last platform, then you jump up to the very top, where you basically complete the little puzzle / timing sequence. And at that point, you run down the little S-curved passageway to the door at the very bottom. The funny thing is, though, there's an overall room timer. So not only do you have to do each individual platform jump quickly, but you also have to do the whole room pretty quickly. Otherwise, the door at the very end will close on you, and you have to run back and retry. So that's the premises. And then there's a lot of timing, testing, and setting up all of that. So this whole project, as in its entirety, Gridlock, really helped me / pushed me to learn a whole lot more about wiring and mechanisms in Terraria, and there really is a lot that you can do. The vast majority of my mechanisms rely on dart traps and dart trap timing, basically to shoot a dart trap and then have it travel and hit a blue or teal pressure plate, and then trigger different mechanisms using that. So this project basically, though, also allowed me to really get somewhat of an introduction to logic gates, which prior to this I had only done a super minimal amount with, and I really didn't have much at all of an understanding of exactly how they work and what all they can be used for. And so I did a lot of learning on those through various videos, wiki, and other things and practice. But I still would definitely not consider myself anywhere near an expert or even mostly competent in any way. But it is something that I definitely improved a ton on due to this project, and I had a lot of fun learning those different mechanisms and then trying to implement them in different ways to make little challenges and puzzles. Here's the third chamber that I went to construct, and with so far all three of these chambers basically don't involve any unusual or weird mechanics. In the third one here, though, my idea was to have the challenge part be using the minecart rail, which there's a small section of right in the center, to launch yourself out either side of the chamber into the next room. So obviously there's no way to jump without accessories out and through one of those side doors. But if you ride the minecart, you can actually build yourself up enough momentum to fling yourself out either door if you time the jump correctly and you're going fast enough. So that's really all there was to that room for right now. But you'll notice there are a couple of levers on the upper left and right parts, which I implement later for different requirements, basically, for different puzzles. My next room was a little bit simple, I guess. It's simple, but just very precise parkour jumping is what I was trying to produce. And you'll see with my trial and error tests, the difficulty level, I guess, might be kind of high. I don't know for sure. I've always felt like I wasn't extremely good at stuff like this, so I figured if I can do it, then anyone should be able to do it with a little bit of practice too. But I suppose some of my challenges may require a little bit of an absurd amount of practice, if that makes sense. But anyway, yeah, the idea for this little desert chamber was just a very precise parkour jumps with maybe a secret or two hidden here or there. And I didn't have like an overall theme for room or chamber progression. Basically, the whole game is built out of the stone slabs, obviously. Actually, stone accent slabs, technically. So it kind of has that industrial feel to it due to that. But each individual chamber, I didn't have any specific theme for progression. I figured that I would just kind of randomly assign different themes, be it forest or maybe the sandstone desert or just industrial stone, to each chamber, and just used each chamber as a standalone puzzle, and each one has its own different challenges and mechanisms to use to overcome things. This next room, as you can pretty much guess already, is just another precise parkour challenge with the use of vines a little bit here. So nothing really too special, but just precise vine and parkour jumping. The frustrating thing about this one mostly is having to do a couple of jumps off of the ledge with only 3 blocks to walk through. So you definitely have to time the jump right perfectly. Otherwise, you either jump too soon, hit your head, and then fall down, or you miss the jump, don't jump at all, and then fall down. So those ones are always a lot of fun. And then in the bottom corner, I did add in 4 little switches, which I was going to use as part of a different code requirement mechanism that would turn on a light to give you a different clue from somewhere else, basically. You'll see I had a few bits of old wiring organized here in the background. A lot of wiring that I worked on, I actually did off camera, and figuring out like combination logic locks or copying different sections of wiring over to new areas, I did off camera. I did quite a bit of that, but you'll still see a lot of it in the recording here too. Basically, there was a lot of wiring involved in this project, and it was pretty fun, but very intensive as well. This room was basically my attempt at creating a combination lock, only without using logic gates. I thought there had to be a way to do it somehow with like a statue, an entity, or something like that. And I did figure out a way. Basically, it's all revealed here, so you can easily solve it by trial and error. And the basic how it works is each of these levers, the 4 in the center, each trigger a different set of dart traps in that big column that the worm falls through. And they also each trigger different doors to open. So basically, as the worm spawns, it then sits on the little ledge, and you have to figure out which switch to pull, which lever rather, in order to open the door to drop the worm to the next level, but not shoot the worm immediately. So there's a certain sequence of the dart traps that trigger up in the top right that as you go through, basically each lever pulls a different door, so you have to pull the doors in the correct order to get the worm to drop down all the way. It's definitely a bit convoluted and kind of messy and quirky, but it kind of did what I was hoping to do, which was just create a combination lock. Even though it is definitely not the ideal way to do it, but it looks kind of fun anyway. So after you solve the worm lock, you can drop down into this chamber where there's a staircase coming down, and there's a little closed off room inside of this chamber that something else opens, I guess. I don't remember. But you can't, is that right? Somehow you can't get out of this room with the current progression of accessories. Is that right? Or maybe I add obstacles so that at this point you are able to get the shoe spikes, I think is what they are. So you can slide down and jump off the wall, and with those, then you're able to make it out of this room, or at least one way. Maybe you can only progress right. Now, you should be able to get out of this room both sides if you have the shoe spikes. If you don't have the shoe spikes yet, though, which you may not have found, but you can, then you can only jump to the right here, where you get into this completely dark room with this set of platforms laid out. So it's basically parkour platforms, but in complete darkness, so you can't see the platforms. Now, the trick is, because it's a dark room, I basically painted all the platforms with echo coating, I think, in the end, or maybe just shadow to make them really hard to see. But without lights in the room, it's basically impossible to see anyway. But what there is these little platforms in the center, which I placed with illuminant coating. So those platforms themselves, they don't produce light, but they do glow, so you can see them. And then when I actuate them so that they don't have collision, and that basically provides a miniature map that you have to follow in order to find the platforms to jump on in the darkness. This room definitely got fairly frustrating, but well, I don't know. I could say that about any of the rooms, I guess. I think it's a cool idea, and I'm happy with the idea anyway. As far as the difficulty of it goes, it's not insane, I guess. I don't know. But that was the idea for this room. And if you do get to the final platform, then you get to that chest in the upper right, which then gives you an important accessory that allows you to get more places. You'll notice these little marble block symbols as well. So those, oh, actually, no. I was wrong. It's not a chest that I put in the corner. It is a lever that you have to flip to do a couple of things. That's right. But you'll notice these marble symbol things, which I was setting up preliminarily as part of one of the larger puzzles that you'll encounter further in progression, basically. A lot of my inspiration for this, for these puzzles and this whole game entirely was from the old claymation puzzle adventure game called The Neverhood, which is one of my favorite games, and it's got a ton about it to appreciate. But a lot of the puzzles from there I took inspiration from, and I even copied exactly one of them to have as one of the sections in Gridlock 2. We'll get to that in the end, or not in the end, but partway through here. So briefly, you might have noticed I was making a chambered door sequence with different colored doors. That's actually another thing that you do encounter in the Neverhood as well. There is basically a series of buttons that you have to find throughout the world and press various buttons to unlock different sections of the door. So that was my idea here as well. I would have a few different colored levers hidden around that you were required to pull in order to open the door eventually after you located and activated all the levers. This little room on the right here, so this would be if you jump to the right from the little minecart bouncy momentum section, then you get thrown into this another parkour room, only this time you're jumping off on conveyor belts, which this one was super annoying. Oh man, trying to do parkour on conveyor belts, and the hilarious thing is they go in random directions basically. So some of them go left, some of them go right, or well, clockwise or counterclockwise. But it makes it super confusing trying to jump from them and to them. So that was a lot of fun to set up here. And then in the bottom corner there, I do have a little lever. So the conveyor belt level actually is basically just a giant rage bait. It does have the lever in the bottom right, which you need to go pull, which is easy to do. But as far as escaping out of the room to the top doorway, you can't actually do that. You can get close, but I believe it's impossible without accessories that you get later on, much later on. So I kind of set it up as a as a trap to try to get people to make the frustrating conveyor belt jumps early on, but you can't actually even leave the room without accessories that you get way later. So it's a bit mean, but that's kind of a lot of what I tend to do. So here we have, what do we have here? I think this is a combination lock. Yeah, it is. So this design for a combination lock is one that I copied from, I'm trying to remember. So a lot of my wiring and logic gate technique I learned from Sorbet Cafe's wiring tutorial, which has just a ton of really good information on simple and moderately advanced mechanisms. But I think this specific lock design I actually got from what's his name? Chaos. That's him. He had this lock design, so that's what I used primarily, and then I scaled it to more inputs and different amounts of different numbers of digits and all that. So then I was confirming my code and everything, so it was these levers down here in the little parkour rope jump room that you were required to put this code in through. But in order to get the code, it was actually given by flipping that little switch in the very first room with the jump gap over it. So that was, you're kind of starting to get an introduction to the dynamic of exploring a room, getting a clue that you might find you need in the next few rooms down, or unlocking something in the fifth room that then you have to go back to the second or third room to explore or pull a lever or to get a code or whatever. So I definitely wanted the puzzle solving to be dynamic and require multiple trips through different rooms and different sequences. And that's something that you find in the Neverhood as well. You're required to backtrack at least some amount, not necessarily a ton, but you will have to do at least some. And then the next little chamber, I start with a little parkour, basically a parkour. It's a specific jump mechanic off of the wall, and a timing that you have to get pretty precise in order to make this little jump gap. So that's all that is. And once you do make it, then it's pretty simple. You're just faced with this door that you it would probably intuit pretty quickly that you need to flip different colored levers in order to open. You're also going to be noticing the pathway going down here, which I'm trying to think. I don't think you can get through yet. So that's something that you'll be able to jump through later in progression and then explore downward from there. But next you will be exploring to the left here, where I started designing a room sort of balancing both Crimtane and Demonite glowing effects. Again, I wanted it to have some level of parkour and puzzle challenge, but importantly, this room is where you will find, if you can make it to the top, I think that's this room. Actually, it's not necessarily make it to the top, but there's kind of a mini maze that you have to navigate through these weird spike blocks here. I basically built a bunch of spikes out of Demonite bricks and crimtane bricks. And so there's a pathway or a couple pathways that you can take to navigate through them. And as you do, you may find a chest in the center that if you reach it, you actually find the Shield of Cthulhu in. So suddenly dashing is unlocked, and that basically allows for a whole bunch more options as far as getting places goes. I really love playing around with dash timings and mechanics and jumping. So that's one thing that I didn't want to wait too long to introduce was the Shield of Cthulhu. So there, I got it placed right in the center there, where there's just a few tricky sort of jumps to try to get through to get to the center of the room. Once you're there, then you can suddenly get upwards as well as down this pathway here, I believe. And then I also went back to test the conveyor belt level now that you have the shield and see if it was possible or easier or harder, how far you could get with it. And you could get pretty much far, but you still couldn't, you still weren't allowed to actually finish the room yet. Go back and try to test the second room here, which even now is still pretty challenging. So I'm trying to decide, do I make adjustments? Do I make it easier, give you more time? What do I need to do here? So I keep making tweaks here and there. Playing around with the worm lock. So then this must be where, or close to where, I start thinking about implementing hidden passages and shortcuts through between the chambers. So you'll notice that I left a 3-block gap, like a secret tunnel passageway space between each chamber. So I had the thought that at some point I would want to allow for or include secret passages and tunnels to open up that would get you shortcuts, or possibly even hiding clues or mechanisms in certain places. So that's what I was trying to do there. But then I get going on the room to the bottom of the colored door room, I guess. I don't know. This room here, it would be the second chamber from the bottom left corner of the whole grid. And my brief idea was just a little pirate themed ocean island or something like that. So I built this little water pool with a couple palm trees so that when you entered the room from the top, you would just drop down and land in the water so you wouldn't die, even if you're a new character that doesn't have much health. I basically tried to make the game functional whether you have 50 health or 500, I guess, but I suppose it does make a difference because some things don't kill you instantly or do different amounts of fall damage, does different things. So I guess it actually does make a pretty big difference how much health you have. But anyway, it's not that big of a deal. My idea for this room was to basically have a combination lock to open your way out of it, and the clue was going to be somewhere acquired, hidden somewhere else. I hadn't decided yet, I don't think. But using these 2 cannons on these scaffolding pedestals, I set up a series of pressure pads up on the wall and the ceilings. And so in order to make entries on the combination lock, you had to aim the cannon and shoot a certain pressure plate. So each pressure plate would be associated with a different digit or whatever. And depending on how you aimed the cannons, you could trigger different digits for entering the code. That's basically the whole idea, and it took a little bit of trial and error to figure out spacing of the cannons, to figure out how to get enough different inputs, basically. So I had to offset the cannons so that they would each have their own unique pressure pads that they were capable of hitting. So part of the challenge was figuring out and remembering which cannon to use to shoot which pressure plate. But once you figure that out, it's really not too bad. It's just a little bit of remembering, I guess, which cannon shoots which pressure plate. It turns out it was a pretty cool little challenge and fun in the end, but it took quite a bit of figuring out to get that spacing working consistently. So once I did get that, though, then I cleared out a little bit more space to go ahead and set up the actual combination lock with logic gates. So I had, I think I have like 9 or something. No, maybe more than that. 11. I think there's 11 or 12 different inputs actually. So this design does have more inputs than some. What's that? 3, 7, 8. Maybe just 11. Oh, just 11 inputs, it looks like. So get all those set up. And for this one too, I did add I added announcement boxes so that once you did hit a pressure plate with a cannon or cannonball, you would get confirmation on which digit you just triggered. And my way of doing that was activating announcement boxes with various numbers of R's. So just to add a little bit more character to it. So, was that a 9 or a 7? You have to count the R's that is displayed, which is kind of tedious and funny to have to do. So that's why you have to do that. This is me trying to come up with a code for the pirate, and I had to figure out what clue to give. So basically, the clue was the pirate code here, which is never eat my jalapeno burger or something like that. So then that's the code, and you have to kind of decipher that and then translate it and input it using the cannons. Now, where you acquire that clue is still undetermined, but it's basically ready to go at a later stage. And if I remember right, I think this clue is given the code for the code, or whatever you want to call it, is discovered when you complete the second victory chamber. So roughly like halfway through the game or something like that. And if I remember correctly, there's also a there was something in the chests down below. It is, I think it's where you find the cannonballs to use, but I think there was something else I hid in one of the chests too, or something that might have been a clue for another code or something like that. But to be honest, I don't exactly remember now. Alright, so that was kind of a little side mission, setting up the pirate code and the cannons. Now I'm starting to get back to the pathway to the first victory chamber, which is going to end up on the left, middle left of Gridlock. So we need to go up 2 more chambers and then over. So I think this around now must be where I actually decide that that is how the victory chambers are going to be laid out. Before this, I don't think I had decided that. I'm expecting that I go ahead and get them built soon, and then we'll know for sure. But for the next puzzle, I had water in mind. So now that you had the Shield of Cthulhu, this next room was going to involve a bunch of water and pumps that you could activate in different sequences to fill up or drain different little, like, basically water columns, and you could dash and jump through them. Now, importantly, I did want to require another accessory in order to complete this, so there is a pair of flippers somewhere that I think, if I remember right, you have to get in order to complete this this section here. Oh yeah, I'm remembering now. So basically, after you get the shield in that chamber just below us, you can now get up to this room, but you can't get past it until you get flippers. And in order to get those, you have to explore branching off from the very first room with the straight jump gap. You have to jump from there upwards, which you can't do until you get the Shield of Cthulhu. But I haven't built that part in yet. What I end up doing is building like a little tower to jump from, and without the dash you can't get enough horizontal distance to grab the rope that you're trying to. So here's a bunch of basically trialing and erroring over how to set up a working puzzle lock system to allow the player to use pumps and these chambers to fill up different parts and make it up the level. I kept having to make minor adjustments here and there because I would end up inevitably discovering that it was actually possible to make a certain jump where I didn't think that it was or could be, but then eventually I happened to make it once, so I have to change it up. A lot of that went on throughout the whole project. But then I jumped back to the first room here that I was talking about. So I built this little tower that you can hop on top of once you get shoe spikes. I'm still trying to save my captain's code clue somewhere for now. But once you get shoe spikes, you can get up to the top of that little platform, and then once you have the shield, you can dash from there to grab that vine. Then I took a quick little break. I jumped down to the input interface for the first little short combination code, and I wanted to give more of a clue on how the inputs were laid out, because I did do it in a unique way where I numbered the quadrants the same as quadrants on on an XY grid. So the number one, and now I'm going to have a hard time remembering, but it goes from the top right to the top left to the bottom left to the bottom right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, moving counterclockwise from the top right. And as in order to hint at that specific layout, I made the switches on a little XY grid. So that should be more obvious for everybody. Then I got going on this last chamber before the victory chamber number 1, and my idea for this was basically a sneaky hide and seek switch finding room where I hid these switches in specific places that were hard to spot and also hard to reach, especially without any accessories. Especially, you'll notice this one switch in the very bottom left of the room. That one down there, you actually can't reach from in this room. So you have to find your way into the wall, climb up inside the wall using your shoe spikes, and then you can flip that switch from in there. So that's kind of a sneaky little thing that you have to do in order to get that last door to open there. I will say, for that level specifically, it's made much easier if you simply take a look at your map. You can use the map to show you the switches a lot easier than seeing them on screen, because I hid them behind platforms and stairs and stuff. So a little tip for that one. Anyway, next I needed to get going on moving upwards from roughly the center here, near the center of the grid. And this room is where I needed to I needed to place the flippers for acquisition. So that was the main purpose of that room there. Figure out a fun little sequence using just the climbing claws really to hop up to that one chest and find yourself the flippers. And from there, not only can you get further in that room, but you can then go back and make it to the final chamber before victory number 1. So I think, if I remember right, we've now basically seen everything required to complete victory chamber number 1. Then in the upper little section of this room, I did set up a couple of other little mini puzzles or combinations that you'll need to figure out in order to get to that upper right hand chest, and then also eventually get up and out of this room here. Pop to the storage room, get some stuff, and then I blasted out another little section outside so that I could put another combination lock in here. So there's, I think this is 2 different 4-digit combo locks, or 4 input combo locks for that other little room, and each one fairly simple, and each one did a different activated one of those copper brick slab platform things. The trick with that part is not only did you have to do the code to activate the platform to jump off of, but you actually have to do it in the moment that you jump and enter it, because you have to land on top of the platform in order to make it out of the room. So you have to kind of complete the code at the same time as you jump, which is a fun little thing that's required in order to move through. add in a little difference in block wall choice and detailing so that it highlights the platforms and what you got to do. And at this point, I have to remember that you have the Shield of Cthulhu and you also have shoe spikes. So every room that I build, I have to remember that in order not to have it exploited with those accessory mobility options. So there's a lot of me hammering different sections of walls, flat walls, so that the surface is broken up and you can't slide and jump off of it with climbing spikes or shoe spikes. This section right here is simple and it's easy, but you have to do something specific, a specific mechanic that some people might not know. So it's a really tricky, sneaky, hidden jump is all it is. And I don't want to spoil too much about it, but that's the whole idea behind the challenge of this room. And then within the room, there are a couple of different little hints and clues that can be found as well. Now I want to say there are a couple of false clues and false hints just to throw you off in some ways, but not a lot. My idea was basically to include different clues and required codes and stuff throughout the whole game, but also include a few false ones. So as long as you're careful and recording everything that you find and see, then you should have everything you need to make it through the progression. But there may also be a couple of false clues or hints that are just meant to confuse a little bit. The Tree of Knowledge, I think, is what I named this room, which was a kind of a reference to Plants vs. Zombies and the Tree of Knowledge from there, but just made a unique looking little living tree. And then I think there are, what I did is I echo-coated signs inside of the tree. So you can't actually see the sign when you're looking, but if you mouse over with your cursor the gap in the tree, then it actually displays the message on the sign. So you can see the hidden message if you mouse over it. Let's see. This room, I wanted it to be kind of castle themed, I think. And my idea was to have 4 different doorways in the form of teleporters mechanically, but 4 different doorways that you had to choose between to try to enter, and there would be some sort of riddle to solve in order to figure out which one to go through. Otherwise, you would be sent back to the start, and you would have to make your way all the way back here and try again. So that was my whole idea here. I think I do end up adjusting the location of this room, though. I think I drop it down by 1. But I'm almost certain I do that. So instead of having it be like a pass-through section, you head downward, you go to the right from here, down, and then back to the left, and that's where you encounter this room in the end. But the idea was there, and I started playing with the mechanics a little bit. So basically, 3 of the teleporters or doors would lead you, just take you back to the start. And then one of them, if you got it correct, you would be taken to the next section, basically. And honestly, I can't quite remember all the mechanics that I had. Oh, okay. Okay. So actually, this was before I had it teleporting you to the next section. This was simply the correct door would open the way forward and the incorrect would send you back. Now, I quickly realized that if you didn't stand on the door above the teleporter, you could just flip all the switches and you wouldn't be punished for getting the wrong one. But I tried to overcome that by having a player sensor that overlapped above the teleporter, so that in order to try to open the door, you had to be where the teleporter would also send you away if you got it wrong. And then up in the very top here, I was putting in the riddle, basically. Actually, shoot. Now, I'm starting to remember, I think that riddle there, that little, I guess riddle, yeah. The little riddle is actually a puzzle or clue to a different code rather than these doors specifically. And then here I reevaluated my layout and adjusted the location, so I did end up changing ideas, changing plan, and I relocated all of those doors to this lower chamber and redid everything down here. I wanted it to kind of have a castle feel and theme to it, as I think I mentioned initially, but that was the hope for building the theme out of, and that way the riddle would relate to a castle story or like a knight or something. There's something about that anyway. Get some lighting down, put in some war table banners to really fit the castle theme. I feel like those banners work so well for castles. I guess they're pretty cool in general, but to me, if I see a war table banner, it's like, okay, that's castle instantly. I don't know what exactly it is about it, but it just that's what it always yells to me anyway. So then, in replacement of the original little doorway riddle room that I had here, I went and redesigned it in the shape of a parkour challenge, requiring dash timing and special use of precise jumps, I guess is actually what it is. And yeah, I made a couple pretty tricky little jumps and used a lot of hammered ledges and walls so that they're not climbable with the shoe spikes, which was pretty important. So you're required to do these really precise jumps. And this room definitely is where the difficulty starts spiking a bit, especially for parkour precision, I would say. And again, I don't consider myself being a parkour expert in Terraria, but building this game definitely helped a lot, and I pushed myself to the limits of what I felt like was doable within reason. So a lot of these sections and jumps are very precise and tough to get. So there's a lot of troubleshooting, trial and error, testing, relentless testing to see what's possible and what's not, and basically discovering new little mechanics or tricks and stuff as well, which end up helping quite a lot. And then I got to do basically equal amounts of testing to ensure that bypassing the challenge isn't possible as well. So there's a lot of testing involved, basically, is what it comes down to. I had the platform, the parkour jumps all in place, so then I just kind of went through and filled in the walls to add roughly interesting background walls to provide a little bit of a pathway, I guess. I used the meteor brick to sort of indicate the intended path, just as something to add to the theme, I suppose. And another thing is, I don't think I mentioned this yet, but each of the rooms has like their own little light set of lighting that pops on to illuminate the whole room. And so typically, as one would discover a room for the first time and explore it, you'll find a switch that will allow you to enable all the lights, basically. And then that helps reveal the room, see what you need to do to solve it, and start working on it. This next chamber, my idea was to build a series of doors behind different levers and switches that activated them. So basically, it's a mini puzzle grid, or what am I trying to say? Maze. It's a little maze lock, and through exploring different areas, you get to different levers, which open different doors, which allow you to explore different areas, and then eventually you will find a sequence that you can open the correct path in the correct way, and then make it out one way or another of this room here. This was one of the more difficult in terms of wiring design, because I had a whole bunch of doors pretty close together, so I had to be very careful with what color wires I used. And then there was a lot of testing to figure out how many doors and which doors each lever should activate in order to make it so that you can't easily open all doors, but so that there is a certain sequence in which you can open and explore the doors in order to make your way through the puzzle. So as you can see, it didn't take long for me to get a pretty out of hand wiring combination. So on top of each door being opened by a certain lever, I actually wanted some doors to be activated by multiple different levers. So I had to overlap different colors of wiring. Say that one door I wanted to open on a certain blue wire switch, as well as a yellow wire switch. So I had to make sure that both blue and yellow wires from those respective switches were overlapping on that door on the actuators, and then I could open and close the door based on or using various different levers. So it was a lot to try to figure out, and it was very tough to balance and find a sequence that allowed a creative path to be solved, but not allow for instant brute forcing where you could just start spamming the first lever that you saw and basically make your way through the whole room by just spamming every lever in front of you until you got through. I wanted there to be some level of problem solving, observation, and puzzle solving. So that was the idea. And overall, it's probably one of the cooler ideas that I came up with, but definitely hard to execute. So there was, when it came down to it, 2 doors leaving that room, one upwards and one downwards. However, the downwards one was blocked by that other barricade until you unblocked it with a different switch from a different place, which I believe was somewhere up here near the second victory chamber, as it turns out, which was located at the top center of Gridlock. But this section here, I designed a series of chutes that you had to creatively jump upwards using your climbing spikes or shoe spikes. Everyone was tricky a little bit because I made the wall hammered, so you couldn't jump up the entire thing, but you could find gaps to jump off of and make your way up. And then at the top of each of the little chutes was a reachable switch with a statue next to it. And so the statues represented digits of a code, and then I went back and hid clues using the different statues for what this code was that you needed to enter to get past this room. So basically, there is a secret combination code for getting past that room, and the code is decipherable after discovering the various statues around the currently explored chambers and sections of the game. And some of them, are hidden pretty well. Some of them are kind of just easily observable as you progress, which I did want a balance of allowing the player to catch on to clues and hints gradually rather than trying to rack their mind around what they're missing and go on tedious searches for something they're so unsure about from the get-go, I guess. I wanted there to be multiple clues throughout the journey leading to this point that would hopefully tip the player off in the direction that they're needing to go. Then we've got another little hint added to the Tree of Knowledge. I kind of kept that tree available to provide hints or clues or tips relating to various stages of progression in the game. So whenever I felt like I needed to include a little bit of information, I would just go back to that tree and fill it in there. And I guess I only did that for 2 or 3 or maybe 4 different hints, but still having that kind of flexibility was nice. And then we move on to another chamber design, and this one was rather unforgiving due to the mass amounts of wooden spikes that I used. And the general idea was just a simple but ballsy chain grab jump to make it across this big pit of spikes. Not really all that much to it other than that. Then there is a kind of secret little passage that you could explore on the left and then bottom of the room to get you to another chest and clue or something like that. I think I modify that as time goes on. But and the next chamber over, again, sort of similarly to this other zigzag shaped meteorite brick puzzle or parkour challenge. I was designing this room to have one or two specific dash jumps that were required to get through. And then there is also one of the larger combination locks that you'll need to have the code for in order to get past this room here. So the what is it? The panel or the interface for code entry is in the top left there, that you have to access through a little bit of parkour jumping. And then in the top right, I put that little other platform with a chest on it. I think there's a chest on it, or maybe there's just a lever up there. But either way, it's a more obscure. Oh yeah, it's just a lever as of right now anyway. An obscure little required lever to get to, which you might not notice at first. Looks like it's at this point, or is it? No, maybe not. What am I building? Oh, this. Okay, so I'm laying out a bunch of space for the 9 input combination lock here. And this one, this one specifically, I if I remember right, I did get from Chaos, who showed this design for the interface, where you could have 9 inputs in that 3x3 layout, where you could actually decipher the very center digit, the 5, or depending on how you wanted to organize the pad, I guess. Actually, the center is pretty much going to be 5 no matter how you organize it, huh? Yeah, probably. That's interesting. I never really thought about that much before. But anyway, the 5 you have to differentiate from one of the other ones. In this case, the 6, where there's a special gate that helps distinguish the 2 inputs. So I'm still finalizing sort of the sequence of progression and putting different little clues and different hints in different spots, or different codes in different spots. But I have not yet actually built in the completion chambers. I don't remember if maybe I don't even do that till the very end. I don't know. I thought I did it earlier, but evidently not. I just have a lot of placeholder clues and codes in different positions ready to go for once I finalize the order of progression and the sequence that is required, I guess. So I'm just reviewing my notes here on the side. I guess I'll mention quick this chamber here that I'm building. I meant to be kind of like this bomb bunker, and in order to get inside, you're required to flip all 3 of these detonators in quick succession. And with the shield dash, you can do it, but it's tricky. You have to be really fast to get all of the detonators activated. But if you have 2 or even 3 people, obviously this room becomes really quick and very easy to do. So that's kind of the first and maybe the major room that is heavily affected with multiple people. Anyway, that's about the idea for it. But in my notes, I was talking about how I use dart traps for timings. And I discovered this really weird thing that took me forever to figure out, where in water, and presumably honey and lava as well, I'm almost certain it works the same. When a dart is fired from a trap, it basically activates the pressure pad wherever it runs into it, unless if the dart has traveled a multiple of 3 blocks, it seemed like. So I kept running into this issue where suddenly my dart trap wasn't triggering the one or both of the pressure pads, and I was like, what's going on? But I finally figured out that it's a weird, just a weird effect that when in liquid, the dart trap doesn't actually activate every third block when it hits or passes a pressure pad on it. Really, really weird. Oh man, I do have a lot of I have all of the codes and notes in the document for Tigaria. Hmm. So the other part of this chamber here that we're in, once you get into the bunker itself, then you have to figure out which switch to pull to actually get out of the bunker through the bottom. And there's a hint about which one to pull, and it's a little bit of Terraria trivia, knowing which weapon is what or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember there being a whole bunch of decoy switches where if you pull the wrong one, you'll just get exploded inside the bunker basically, and then have to go back. But if you get the right one, then you get out, and you're actually able to complete the victory chamber number 2 at that point. And once you do that, you are able to remove this barrier at the bottom part of the little door room that is right above us currently for this snow room. And this is the first snowy themed room, where it leads you to the castle door riddle code room thing. But the trick for this room is there is a barricade door that you have to open, and I think there are 3 different little levers to activate within these snowy passageways in order to open the door. Now the catch is there are also a bunch of pressure plates along the floor that, when stepped on, spawn pigrons from pigron statues, and they'll come in and murder you. So you have to tiptoe around dodging the pressure plates or certain pressure plates. I think some of them are what actually opens the door. But you have to basically tiptoe your way around, not spawning pigrons, otherwise you'll get destroyed. And as you can see, I've definitely started introducing the death penalty for certain puzzles here. With the, well, I guess it started with the spike jump, and then you have the bunker, and now you have the pigron trap in the snow. So it gets less forgiving as you get further along, and so as part of the scaling difficulty, I basically made it much more punishing to make mistakes as you get further along. But to balance that out, of course, with the discovery of each different room and more accessories and mobility options, you do get easier and quicker transportation. So it kind of balances out, I guess. Or it tries to, anyway. Took me a minute to figure out why my pigrons weren't spawning, and I discovered that they needed more space, actually, which is kind of interesting, seeing as they can fly through walls no problem. They still require a 3-block tall and I think 4-block wide space to spawn in around the statue. Speaking of being more forgiving, as I introduce less forgiving death penalties, I tried to implement levers and shortcut openings to allow you to skip over sections after you have completed them at least once. So that's an important thing to have as well and keep in mind. Oh, that's what it is there. So I was mentioning that one lever in the top right of the second meteorite brick room, kind of. If you can get to it, what that lever does is it opens up a big shortcut, allowing you to quickly get back there. One of my problems I realized was it was a little too dark and dim and obscure where these wooden spikes were, so I wanted to somehow add a little bit more light, and I ended up doing that with another hanging lantern, it looks like. Just in general, adding a few more lights here and there to make things a little clearer. Oh, maybe this is actually where I go back through and really make sure that each room is well lit and does have its own little switch to activate, turn off and on the lights for the room. Then there's messing around with the water level again. Back to this, because I never actually finalized the mechanics of this room. I needed to figure out some way to actually make it work. And after that, I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh, this is the room. Okay, yeah. So this chamber is where you come out from the teleporter if you pick the correct doorway in the castle riddle. That's what this room is. So I built a mini castle scene, basically, that you come out into, which was kind of cool. Every once in a while I see the gold worm pop up on the lifeform analyzer. I do remember quite a few gold worms while I was working on this project. Obviously you can see worms and mice running around everywhere. And I think I did catch a few, but there's also a few that I couldn't catch that I would start looking for, go the wrong way, and then they despawn, or they just get run over by a skeleton or something. So definitely happened there. Outside of the castle, I did want the snowy feel and snowy theme, so I started hinting towards that, and then in the upper chambers from here, I do have more snowy sections, I believe. But in addition to popping out here in the castle, I had to have a little clue or mechanism required here or somewhere to use. And I don't remember specifically what I did, because I want to say there's more than just jumping out of the room and hopping up. There's a little more to find. But then you get up to this next castle structure that you have to conquer. And this one, my sort of similarly to the second room that I did, there was a sequence of jumps on platforms basically to complete in order to get up onto this tower. But instead of jumping on each platform and then flipping a switch to activate the next one quickly, what I did is I had the active inputs for the platforms all down below here on these switches. And then each switch, of course, would correspond with a certain platform, but it wouldn't activate it right away. It would activate it after a timer, and then it would deactivate. So what you had to do was activate in a certain sequence at a certain timing these switches, and if you did that, then you could start jumping on the platforms as they appeared and or disappeared in sequence that you set up. So then you would have to follow your own sequence to get up and onto the top of the little castle tower there. This one did turn out pretty cool. I like the idea, and it wasn't super difficult to design. Especially, I started using honey a lot of the times to compact the larger timings of dart traps and stuff. But anyway, using that general idea, I was able to fairly successfully figure out a fun sequence of timing and jumping. Although I did have to, as always, make quite a few adjustments to get the timing reasonable and working well enough. Even with honey, I ended up extending my timing quite a bit to actually give adequate time to set up a sequence and then try to jump on it. Then some testing. I still have to extend it a little bit more. And then I have to extend it more. Oh yeah. Oh. Looks like I finally finally figured out a timing that worked decent. So I was able to get up and get it figured out finally. So now I did have to make some adjustments to those teleporter doors. I remember. I don't remember specifically what I had to do, but I did make a little change somehow because they weren't something in the sequence wasn't lining up, or I in the progression order or something. I made adjustments. So after you get through the little cloud jumping onto the tower, then you get out to this weird sort of mystical magic themed crystal room, I guess. And in here, I think there's more parkour. Oh, here's the gem lock. Okay. So at this point, here's where you're required to have this this large sapphire in order to break out of this door and into the rest of the room. And I think there's also a door now that opens up to the very start if you find the lever to do so in this room, or the switch, I guess, switcher. I think it's this lever here in the corner that I put in, and it allows you to open that door as a shortcut to gain access to here. Oh, that's what it was. So for this room, I was playing around with the floating water bubbles and basically just having them stationary, but requiring swimming with the flipper and dashing with the shield to get through all of them. Again, I got to go back and make sure that all of the regular walls are filled with, or not filled, but hammered, so that they don't accidentally open up unintended shortcuts. Add a few actuated crystal spikes for atmospheric feel, and then a little bit of lighting to add to the mysticism. I think those must just be sapphire torches here, partly in theme with the sapphire gem lock that is required to start that to break out into that room. So now I'm doing a lot of the lighting, so kind of taking a step back, go back to all of the previously set up rooms, make sure that my initial discovery light switch is set up. That's what I was talking about earlier, so that when you get to a new room, you can turn the light switch on and fully reveal it and start piecing together what you need to do, rather than as you explore the adjacent rooms, being able to see instantly all of the other rooms just doesn't feel as it feels cooler to me to reveal a room upon discovering it, rather than from just peeking into it from next door, which, depending on the room, there's different glowing things and effects, so you get sort of hints or snippets of information, but most rooms do require or are greatly benefited by actually turning on the lights and then fully revealing them. In the bottom left corner room now. So this is the room that I wanted to grant or give the what am I trying to say? This is the room that you had to get the sapphire from, the large sapphire. And so I had to figure out what kind of setup to do to allow for that to happen. My hope was that in this room I could actually provide a couple of different important keys or accessories, functionally keys, but require them to be retrieved at different progression points. So right now we still have the shield and the shoe spikes, so we can get a couple of these ledges, but we can't get to the upper ones. And my hope was to award some other accessory, mobility accessory, that would eventually allow the player to reach the upper platforms, and then have more options for different key acquisition at that time. So it basically built in more backtracking and multiple attempt exploration progression, or whatever you want to call it. I guess it's just backtracking is what it's called. Took a little break again and went and filled in all of the interior passageways between all the chambers. Felt like it was a good time to get that done and taken care of, and at this point I'm probably about halfway done or so with all of the chambers, something like that. And I continue on the progression, technically speaking, between Victory Chamber 2 and Victory Chamber 3 is where we're headed now in progression wise. So basically, after leaving the castle, you've explored into this other castle-y tower. You make it through this weird magic watery jump sequence, and then you find yourself in the wizard's tower here in the very top of the castle, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. And there is a special combination lock, basically. I can't remember. I think you're required to have a special lock to get out of the left side of this room. And that lock I called like Wizard's Lock or something. Yeah, Wizard's Lock. And the code for that one is decipherable from one of the previous riddles or something like that. Yep, have the switches laid out and ready. So in order to get out of the left-hand door, you have to put in the correct code. On the right, though, there is the option to get out the right-hand side door, and out that door you can explore into another little towery structure, which allows you to get into a different section before you get the code figured out, theoretically. As far as the room theme goes, it's that wizardy room with a sort of hazy pastel colored sky that I blotted about in different shades of different paint colors of sail. Just felt like that would be adequate for the wizardy, magic-y feeling. Here we go for Wizard's Lock, the logic gate combination for it. So it is only a 4-input lock, but it is a little bit more lengthy. It's got, what, 6 or 7 digits or whatever. Yeah, that'd be right, I think. By the end of this, I definitely got a lot better at setting up these logic gates, or sorry, the combination locks using logic gates. But there are still some of them that I tweaked something and messed something up slightly, and it would take me like 20 minutes or half an hour just to figure out where I had accidentally misclicked a piece of wire and why it wasn't working right or something. So took me quite a while on some of the codes there. But I did get it working there successfully, so the wizard's lock was ready to go. And then I added a couple mini little bubble jumps here, allowing for exploration on the right side here. I guess actually I'd continue to the left next. And I'm trying to remember what challenge this actually is. Oh. Something to do with statues. I don't remember how this one turned out exactly. I vaguely remember trying to make some sort of puzzle that required you to activate different statues at different times in a certain sequence, maybe. But I think I kind of end up scrapping most of this idea and just making a special little like worm or snail, I think it's a snail parkour course that you have to help the snail navigate through in order to get it to like a pressure plate or something. Because I really don't remember anything working with this initial idea of having different statues spawning different things. I open the map up and contemplate, what the heck am I doing here? What is this actually going to work? I'm pretty sure what I was trying to do is get different sized mobs, some of which were passive, some of which weren't, which would make it tricky to handle. But I wanted like each one to need to be in a specific place to activate like a red pressure plate, so that you would have to basically figure out a sequence of statues to activate in order to get it working. So then I went, eventually scrapped that idea and went with maybe a more simple variation with just one statue and then different doors to control to try to manipulate the skeleton to actually get up to where you want it to be. Again, I don't remember if this is what I ended up doing in final, or if I go back to like a snail statue, because I don't remember this skeleton being what I ended up going with. I don't know for sure. I tried the crab, tried a granite golem. I see what I was trying to do, but I don't know if I ever was successful in pulling this off. Basically, I was trying to manipulate the pathing of the enemy in order to get them to jump onto a certain pressure plate in this little maze in order to basically activate a door to get out of. Maybe I do still have this puzzle in the game, and I just don't remember. Man, I definitely spent a lot of time on this one. Get honey poured out. So I wanted it to be a little bit more oh, you know what I just thought of? What if you set up some mechanism with dart traps that shot across each other? Like you have some dart traps shooting up and down, but then you have other dart traps in the same pool of honey or water, or same area, whatever, it doesn't have to be liquid, that shoot across left to right. That would be kind of interesting. I guess I end up converting my honey darts back to horizontal in the end. I don't remember what I ran into with that, but this way each of the little doors was actually on a timer that closed it only briefly and then opened it again. So you actually had to be pretty quick and precise with your timings of activating the doors and opening and closing them in order to get the hoplite to jump and move where you needed him to. Oh, wait a second. Now I'm adding in snail and crabs? Oh, dang. I really did make this complicated. Oh man, so yeah. So I wanted the hoplite to hit one pressure plate, the snail to hit another, and then the crab to hit a third one. Man, that seems pretty hard. Man, some of my ideas were a little bit complicated, I guess. Man, I'm just kind of mesmerized with what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so I add dart traps or spear traps in. It looks like invisible, but triggerable, so you could like clear the level maybe or something. But then I also finally get the the correct pressure plates kind of lined up. I think, yeah, so what I was trying to do, I was trying to initially require you to basically figure out a way to get all of the pressure plates activated at once. But I think I ditched that idea because that would be way too hard, and ended up just having it so you would have to figure out each one independently at least once in order to open the door forward. Man, I spent so long on that one room though. That's crazy. Backtracking a little bit again here. Remember that the conveyor belt level? So as if it wasn't already hard enough, at the very end I made it so that when you could finally actually progress through it, with you had the ability to, I made it so that it activated or enabled a set of teleporters on the whole floor that if you fall down and hit the floor, you're just immediately teleported back to the beginning of the level. Or not the level, but the start room. So it's really hilarious. Anyway, after that huge fiasco with the little, like, I don't know, mini monster maze, you could call it, the monster maze level, I have another desert themed with a weird, or like crumbling abandoned desert outpost, and I'm trying to remember what the trick for this one was. I suppose just a combination code for one side, and then I can't remember what the deal is. Oh, there is this special little chamber in the top. Okay, yeah. I was trying to come up with a tricky little jump to allow you to get up and into this secret little chamber to get a different tool or something. Mm-hmm. So then I kind of hide the hint symbol to link that special door opening up above, and then it looks like I have, so this code is somehow decipherable based on a series of paintings, which I think I hide throughout the previous sections. Man, this part specifically, I don't actually remember a ton of the details. And now I don't even know what is this actually a combination lock? I'm confused at what this wiring even is now. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I do not remember what the heck I was doing here. It was obviously must have been some sort of code with having to do with paintings. But that's kind of funny. I do not remember the details on this at all. Oh, wait. Oh, I think what I did. I think I name. Basically, I list the paintings out by name, and they're ordered. The switch color that I painted the switch represents different paintings. And so, in order to figure out which which switch is what number, you have to figure out what color that painting is. Man, I really don't remember that now. I don't know. I should play this again. Hmm. Interesting. Anyway, it looks like I go back now to one of the close to the center chambers here. So next to the wizard tower, we go over to the right, and this, remember, this is explorable as soon as you get into the wizard tower. So you can get here right away. And the basically the theme is to transition from wizard into space. So here you get into outer space. There's a little spaceship set up with different little space platforms that do something, I don't know. But basically it takes you to the spaceship, which has a teleporter in it, which takes you to one of the next major parts of the progression, where we go. It teleports you sort of down to the bottom center / bottom right area of Gridlock, I think, right? Yeah. Yep, so we're just to the right of the shadow platform map, where you'll come out in this spaceship, and you have to do some more parkour jumps and stuff in order to make it out of there. Now, I do remember that room being special in that you have to do a series of jumps kind of quickly in time with a dart trap, a dart projectile that flies around the room. But you also kind of have to not get hit by the projectiles because they can kill you. So you kind of have to jump around, make it from platform to platform in timing with a dart trap that keeps triggering in a chain, and make it through the doors as they're in the timing that they're open for. And then part of my idea was to have these, I think those are just Martian conduit plating, have them as kind of like stars or a constellation in the dark the dark sky. And then here is the dart trap sequence, which basically, yeah, it activates a series of triggering dart traps, which bounce around throughout the room. The further back that you're able to start the sequence from, the more time you'll have to try to make the jumps and get to the final door as it's opening. I must have called that about good with the testing on those dart trap jumps. And then I moved over to somewhere on the far left again. I don't think I haven't actually built the progression into this room yet, but I wanted to get in place this room because I think this is the special one that I copied almost exactly off of one of the puzzles from the Neverhood. So in the Neverhood, there is a puzzle where you play as this little mouse, and there is a series of levels of floors, basically, of just flat floors, and each floor has a miscellaneous number of doors of mouse holes that you can enter through. And each mouse hole that you enter takes you out a specific other hole or entrance that could be on the same level or could be on a different level. But there are barriers in the form of these cans that block you from traveling across the entire floor horizontally. So you have to use only the doors that are accessible to you to enter and find a path that eventually leads you to the very end of the puzzle. And that's what I wanted to do here. So I got the floors spaced out, and my idea was to, in the Neverhood, you get to the cheese at the very end, and then the puzzle is finished, and you move on. In this one, I just decided that instead of it to represent that, you would get to the bottom right cheese and you can move on. Instead of like just completing the puzzle and moving on, you actually physically move on in Gridlock from the same location. So the teleporters here all represent the different mouse doors, and these crates I placed to represent the cans that allow you that prevent you from walking between the teleporter doors. I used echo painted blocks to basically allow you to prevent you from walking beyond or on the crates, because obviously in Terraria crates don't have collision, although you can stand on them. So you could just walk straight through them if it weren't for some echo blocks. Then I needed to design the actual little doorways, the mouse doors. So I spent a little bit of time figuring out how I wanted to do that. I wanted it to be fully lit and everything. I guess a major trick though was just fitting enough wiring in. This one was a very tricky wiring challenge. Obviously, it's already surrounded by different wiring from the other rooms, and I had to do quite a lot more in this room to get everything connected as it should be. I did spend a good amount of time in the Neverhood as well, trying to record and copy where every door goes. So I had to get that figured out as well. So then I had the template and the ins and outs of every door located. Oh, right. Okay. So initially here what I set up is the yellow wire there would be all of the lights, I think. However, unless I'm mistaken, I immediately just cover a bunch of the lights with with the other colored wires too. So that really doesn't work super great. Surely I found out a different solution for that. I think I may have ended up just not having lights on a switch in this room, and I just use diamond gem spark wall probably to illuminate things and just put them behind some of the blocks or something. Oh, wait. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure that's what I did. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, here's where I realize it. So yeah. So I did have all those diamond gem spark blocks, and they were just getting activated randomly by wires. So I went ahead and I fixed that. Actually, wait. I still went for gem spark blocks? I still tried to put them in as blocks. I wonder if I do actually. Do I have them wired up on lights? That would be crazy if I did. Maybe. Is this after I actually already figured out all the wiring? Maybe it is. So once I did have the wiring figured out, then I went back and I just placed some blocks where there wasn't wiring. I guess that's all it was. So there's not enough room to have the lighting on a switch, but there was enough space I could still use blocks instead of gem spark walls, which I don't know why I didn't just use walls, to be honest, but there it is. So I think that does complete the little mouse level, the mouse hole level. So that is in place, and above it here, so this would be the previous chamber to entering that one. I don't have a mechanic from the Neverhood, but I did want to copy part of the Neverhood itself in Terraria as best I could. So one of the characters in the Neverhood is called Willy Trombone, and he plays a very important role, but he also has a house in the Neverhood which you can visit, and it is this weird single room in the very top of this clay tower. And so that's what I tried to recreate here, is Willy's house in the top of this tall clay unique looking tower. And then from that tower is just a simple like timing switch that you have to activate to get down into the mouse level is all. Pretty much not a whole lot to that. In the Neverhood though, it's basically just a big world that's built out of clay, and in the outside of the world is just this black space. Like there's not really any atmosphere or anything. It's just a very isolated world with black nothingness everywhere around it. And so in order to represent that, I used just like black painted adamantite wall for the background. And then I recreated the little Neverhood clay trees that they have in their world as well. So overall, using the clay in Terraria worked out pretty good, and I was pretty happy with the little representation that I actually got there. And then I was trying to get furniture to set up Willie's room with. And I was actually able to get a lot of the key details about Willie's room fit in there, which I was really excited about. So here is just a simple timing delay where I just put one dart trap in that little row of honey or little strip or whatever, and then that basically is just a short timer that you activate and then have to jump through the door at the end before the timer runs out. It's pretty simple and not really too hard or anything. Oh, and then it looks like I start setting up another tricky parkour precise jump to unlock a certain little area. And this is now continuing with the space themed section where we're so we're not actually made it to the Victory Chamber 3 yet. We're still on the way there. But we've gone from Magic Wizard Castle to space, and now we're in kind of a space station themed looking thing with some unique jumps and then little hints and clues and codes here as usual. So next up, we're still in space here, and I had this goofy idea to put not necessarily a puzzle, but a timing switch challenge, where I set up this funny little dart trap array in a box, and the switch here basically triggered the next dart trap in sequence as long as the current dart trap was in the green window. So I set up, what did I use? Yeah, these logic gates down here, so that if the dart from, say, the first layer was within the green area, then you could flip the switch and it would trigger the next dart trap. If you then timed it correctly while that dart trap is in the green area, then it gets to the next one and the next one, so on. Finally, you have to get the timing just about perfect for the final dart trap in order for it to open the door and allow you to continue. I played around with it for a while and ended up eventually realizing it was a little bit too finicky and weird, so I filled it with water, which made it easier because it slowed down the darts, but it also made it a little bit more mysterious because tracking the dart through the water was a little bit funny. So I ended up going with that, and I had some sort of timing block, so you couldn't just sit there and spam the lever really quick. You actually had to time it correctly because each input disabled the activation for like a short amount of time. So that way you actually did have to get the timing right instead of just spamming things. So that worked out pretty good. Then I moved back up to some of the upper chambers where I started prototyping this idea for a shimmer puzzle. So with this room, the current accessory loadout that you could have allowed you to, I think, have, what was it? Oh wait, maybe you didn't have water walking boots currently, but I was planning on implementing that before too long in the future. So without them, you could make a certain number of these jumps and get onto these little platforms down below to then acquire clues or hints or something. It was my idea, or maybe even items. So using shimmer, basically I was unlocking different clues or accessories in a sequence. So that was pretty cool too. Worked out pretty decently, and I don't remember exact details on how it all fit into progression, but definitely there was some different steps to go along through here and there. Back and forth to base, and I'm getting close here. It looks like where I'm now getting out the handgun and the musket pouch. So, as you would imagine, one of the later mechanics that I decided to introduce was projectiles. So with projectiles, you could trigger pressure plates and activate certain things from a distance, quickly in sequence, and all of this type of stuff. So that was a big part of progression, and I had to figure out precisely where and how to award it so that everything properly lined up, basically. But as I started getting that figured out, then continuing with the little space-themed section down towards the bottom, my next idea was now using the handgun with the projectile, I think at least. I built this little meteorite jumping level, pretty much. So if I remember right, each of these meteorites is on actuators, and they're all activated with a different target along the side of the room. Either that, or actually no, they might all be activated simultaneously in a sequence. So this is really where I started getting into using shift registers, where I would basically have a progression of platforms, or meteors in this case, that are all in a sequence on a shift register together. So with each trigger of the system, you would shift the platform to the next state. So the idea is you are standing on one meteor, you shoot the trigger, and then you jump to the next one in midair while the meteorite shifts to the next one being active. I say all that, but now that I'm looking at it, I think I did say what I originally was saying, or I did what I originally said, where I have each meteor on its own different pressure plate, so you have to jump and shoot at the same time in the correct order, rather than just having it all on a shift register. In this case. Yeah. Something like that. Anyway, continuing on with space, we have, I'm pretty sure, this room for sure is when I implement shift registers, because I have basically a rotating oval of platforms that activate around each other, and then you have to just time your jump between platforms with the rotation of the shift register in order to make your way to the upper control room up there. And then from there, I think you just teleport down or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it is shift registers, and so it's a fun little timing jump sequence. And then I write a different clue in the background on the wall there. Fairly subtly. Wow, that took me a while to get right. Subtly. bring all my wiring down, and here's where I get going on the actual shift register. So, and then I realize I can't use 4 different colors of wire. Actually, I probably could if I just added another lamp on the logic gate, right? I'm pretty sure I could have just added another random, activated light lamp on the logic gate and it would have been fine, but instead I went and rewired it so that I only used 3 wire colors. So I had yellow for the trigger, which in this case I just had a timer set up so that when you entered the room you would start a timer and then jump around from there. And then now I'm remembering what the code there is, because there's another, basically just a combination lock in the very top room there. Once you get into it, there's a little combination lock that you enter in order to teleport you to the bottom, from which you then actually make it to Victory Chamber 3, I think. And then here's also where I realized that I wanted each of these platforms to activate and deactivate the previous platform at the same time. So I had to add a complicated little extra system to do that, which took me a while to figure out and then get everything working correctly. Overall, shift registers I had quite a bit of trouble with, mostly due to figuring out how to deactivate the previous at the same time. Like, it's easy to set up one that just goes in sequence, but if you want it to deactivate the previous one, then it's a little bit trickier. And then we have the little combination lock there, which I quickly just set up in the room right above it. And I'm pretty sure that's what that was, although it's definitely very compact. Then we have another included little pressure pad. This time you'll notice I hid it behind that angled passageway, meaning that you could only trigger it once you got the meteor shots, and you could bounce the shot off the ceiling down onto it. So that was pretty obvious there, and that allowed me, going into this next section, to now have meteor shots and set up some sort of puzzle platformer using that technology. So that was my whole idea for this room, and I just went about trying to design a series of these angled platforms for jumping across and on, but then adding them on various pressure plates or pressure pads here and there that required you to be in certain areas and at certain angles in order to actuate and deactuate different things and make it through there. Took me a good amount of time, if I remember right, to get all of this sort of working as decently and as intended, but I think it worked out okay in the end of things. And basically, as of now, we're actually fairly... We have the vast majority of chambers explored. There are still a handful that are not explored yet or not discovered, but the number of newly discovered chambers between levels 3, victory level 3 and victory level 4, I think is fairly low. But the thing is, there's a lot of piecing together different clues and hints and codes, and a lot of backtracking required. So there's quite a bit of effort put in as you get up to this further and further through the game, basically. But here in this little chamber, I set up a bunch of different pressure plates and sort of randomly assigned different sections to different pressure plates in hopes that it would come up with like a decent sequence. Oh man, my voice is gonna be dead now. I don't know what just happened. Gotta start chugging my water here. Anyway, I started with this somewhat random sequence here of these platforms, and then sort of adjusted them as I went and tried to come up with a progressive design that allowed for unique problem solving, as usual. And to be honest, I don't totally remember how well it worked. I think my idea was somehow to try to get on top of that far upper right little pillar thing. And then once you were up there, figure out what to shoot in order to actuate that slanted slab right below the upper door, which you could then dash onto and get up from there. And I think that's generally what I was aiming for, and I don't remember how well it worked or how tricky it ended up being. But that did allow you to make it up from there. Then I jumped back up towards the upper left-hand section, chambers of the level of Gridlock, and I have a few more chambers to build in. So we're now I'm starting to kind of follow a somewhat of a theme, at least across a couple of different little chambers. So we're going from the shimmer into sort of a crystalline cave sequence. And so we've got crystals jutting out from the wall, crystal doors to open up with different codes, and little things to navigate your way through there. Again, I don't remember specifically. There wasn't a new special mechanic or anything that I was introducing in this room specifically, but there were various codes and hints that were required to along the way. Oh, I guess maybe with this little pressure plate, I did require having those meteor shots before getting through this room. Next room over, I transition back into the sort of industrial theme again. So we're back in the brick a section, brick blocks, anti-portal. Oh, portals! This is where you need to start using the portal gun. Okay, I forgot actually that I even had portal sections. So yeah, this section you needed to use the portal gun, which I think actually wait, yeah, right. So my idea was to basically preemptively set up your portals and then use a sequence of jumping and shooting your handgun with meteor shots. You actually had to trigger that other pressure pad in order to get certain walls out of your way while you're making the jump to get the portal enough momentum to launch yourself over the barrier. There was some sequence using both the portal gun and the handgun in tandem. And here goes trying to test it out. I think I'm still trying to get it to work once. So now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, there was that lever on the right hand side, so you had to trigger that by hand, but then you had to make it back up the other platforms and then shoot that other one at the last second in order to gain enough momentum, open your pathway up, and launch out the portal to jump across there. Something like that, I think. So then from that portal room, we get into the very upper left corner room of the whole Gridlock, where there's these growing living trees and this big code panel to input, and a special door code in order to even get into here, and some sort of puzzle or clue that hints at how to find the code to input in this panel. And then I'm back at the start. Figured I needed to build in a little living tree there for whatever reason, so I did that. And then, then I don't know what I do. I do a lot of random looking through my chests and then get down to filling in one of the bottom right sections, which this room, again, similarly to that tree room that I just did, was going to have a unique six, what is it? Not 6 digit, but 6 input code. And then in this room, there's another large-scale puzzle to solve. Remember those marble symbols that I was talking about near the start, this room would have a bunch of symbols and a code required to decipher those symbols, basically, or a code to the derivation of which required deciphering those symbols. Does that make sense? Probably not. I don't know. So basically, I laid out a bunch of little symbol sections in this room to array a bunch of different symbols, each one with a little switch associated with for inputting. And then I think, if I remember right, this isn't actually a combination lock, or would that be? It's not a sequential combination lock, but instead you just have to get all of the correct symbols switched at the same time, which you sometimes can brute force, but given the number of different options there are here, it would make it pretty hard to do that. And you'll notice that some of these symbols, when you looked on the map, are actually the same block configuration, but if you go and explore them next to each other, you'll notice that they are unique and different. So that required you to actually remember the shape of the symbol rather than just the shape of the blocks on the map. So you can't just sit there in that room and look on the map to get all of the information you need. You actually do have to record some of that information as you find those symbols throughout, which I thought was kind of cool. Some people might not think that's cool because it's more work, but that's the way it goes. Next, another similarly themed major lock room, I suppose. And this one also would have an overarching clue scheme throughout the rest of the game, where each of these statues represents a different number, and the code can be found and deciphered from the statues located around the game. So basically, you'll notice a familiar theme here at the end, where as you have the most of Gridlock fully explored, you will have access to all of these different clues and hints that when you put them all together, you'll be able to solve the tree room lock, the marble room lock, and now this stone like pirate cave room lock. And I think there's one more, which maybe is this one here, yeah. So actually near the interior of the game, I build this other end game room where there's another required lock, basically. And each of these rooms, in order to get into them even, requires a special code that you only find at some other location throughout the world, throughout the game. Sorry, the world of Gridlock. Yes. Now this room has a whole bunch of the shadow candles in it, and the way to activate that room is to find and enable all of the various shadow candles throughout the rest of the world. So then I go back and I hide a bunch of these around everywhere in obscure locations. And then all of those correspond with one of the candles in that room. And once all of them are lit, then that triggers the completion of that room. Oh yeah, I hide one there. Man, watching this back now, it really makes me want to try playing through this to see if I even can. Man, there's a lot of stuff. I remember definitely being pretty proud of myself in the completion of the game by the end of it, and I'm starting to be reminded why. I felt like I did a pretty cool job of entangling many different pathways and clues and hints and required exploration that accumulates as you continues to accumulate as you explore the whole level. So then I had to get the statues down, which all correspond with the pirate cave code. I guess I'll call it that, which is that lower code, a room next to the pirate cannon puzzle. And then where are we here? This is this the final? Yeah, so here now what I'm building actually is the final room that leads to the end of the game, the fourth victory chamber. So this room basically would display and represent your progress with the other 4 main objective rooms / locks. And after completing all 4 of those, this switch then becomes active and is able to open the hallway that leads you to victory and completing of Gridlock. And so each of those 4 major objectives then is symbolized and displayed in this room with those emerald gemspark symbols. And then I add in this little safety here. So this is another key feature where if you go and attempt to flip the switch without completing all 4 objectives, or sorry, flip that lever, if you pull the lever, the door, not only will the door not open, but a whole bunch of boulders will rain down and flood the room and almost certainly kill you. However, if you do have all 4 objectives complete, then you're shielded when you pull the trigger, and the boulders can't kill you, and you will have your way opened to the victory of Gridlock. And here's me setting up the also extra mean teleporter boot that just sends you right back to the center when you accidentally fall down there. Although, actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember precisely when that becomes active. It may only become active at the point where all 4 of the main objectives are done. I think that might be right. So you won't get trolled by it until you're steps away from completing the whole game. And then I have to go back and make sure that I have all of the marble symbols displayed and are arranged throughout the rest of the world here. Or sorry, level again. Gridlock is its own mini world. It's fine. Oh, and now that I finally got all of basically the clues for those major objectives gotten in place, I finally move on to filling in the very first room, and then opening up and readying for the victory chambers, I believe here. So got the first room actually filled in with background walls. Got the space mined out for the victory chambers, some of which was kind of intruded on by wiring and mechanisms. So I had to do a little bit of shifting around and squeezing even more with wiring and stuff. But then eventually got just enough space to fit the extra victory chambers in, which are the same dimensions as the regular chambers throughout Gridlock, but they're specially placed on the outside of the main 7x7 grid, one in the center of each edge, basically. So in the middle, on the top, left, right, and bottom of Gridlock. So then I just fill those in, and I theme them generally based off of prestige, similarly to the other 2 mini game level completions. And then importantly, each level is required to progress to the next one due to a clue or an accessory or some item that is given by discovering that chamber. So you'll see, like, I temporarily have saved notes of a clue or a code that you'll get once you get a certain victory chamber, or in this case, this gingerbread man that I have temporarily stored in that item frame. I don't remember exactly what that is, but I think that's important. And then I just came up with a decently cool design that I tried to spice up each of the rooms with. So number 1 was, I already forgot. Did I just use ebonstone brick walls? I think so. Number 2 is on top, which I used the meteorite brick walls. This is number 3 here with Martian conduit walls, Martian plating walls. Oh no, it's not. It was sparkle stone wallpaper that I used for level 1 here. And then level 4, which finally completes on the direct right-hand side of Gridlock, is Luminite themed. So Luminite brick walls for that one. I sort of round out the corners of the rooms with stone bricks, and I think I want to say I used stone bricks for all of them, and then different colored moss, but I might be misremembering that. Maybe I just used different types of brick, such as stone, meteorite, then the Martian plating probably, and then like luminite bricks at the end, just to represent that progression in prestige. But no, here I go adding moss in, so maybe I do the moss. Who knows? I don't know. Basically, each of the victory chambers has its own little theme going on, and represents a little bit of victory in your progression is all. So pretty straightforward there. Well, maybe I was partially right. So on Victory Chamber 2, I do end up using the meteorite bricks, it looks like. So, and then, yeah, it looks like luminite here for the fourth one. Sometimes I just feel like I need to shut up and watch and learn from myself. At this point, as of in terms of actual time that's passed, wait, I'm pretty sure. So I built Gridlock, I think, a little over a year ago. Is that right? 4, 9. Yeah. Yeah, so I built Gridlock in like September of 2024. So probably like 14, 15 months ago. So not like that long ago, but it has been over a year. So I've lost some of the details in my mind. But a lot of this now is basically, at this point, I have the sequence of chambers all figured out, ready to go, and I just have to finalize fleshing out the specific accessories and items and keys and codes to give in order to have that sequence work fully. So at this point, it's finalizing the placement of all the items and codes, getting all of the final little mechanisms fleshed out, making sure everything's kind of working, and furnishing the victory chambers and all that. That's important. I still had the very start chamber to do as well. So I had the teleporter sitting here, but I basically just needed to set up the very basic start protocol for the game, just some basic instructions, and build in a little room for you to get going from, basically, is all. So I wanted to like build a little bedroom so you could set your spawn in here, finalize the teleporter position, set things up, and yeah, all just the basic logistic introduction to the game is all. So that, nothing too crazy. And then, like I said, furnishing of the victory rooms, and then including the necessary hints for them was important. Man, there sure are quite a few wires going here and there. So from every victory chamber, I needed to get a line back to the start, so you could just easily teleport back to the start of Gridlock and then go out with your new information. I suppose there might be some times when you would want to just go back out into the previous chambers, which would be fine. But a lot of times you want to get back to the start. So for quality of life and cohesion or completion, I guess, completeness of the infrastructure, I wanted to have those teleporters as an option to take you right back to the spawn. Of course, you do have a magic mirror as part of the initial game tool, so you always have that option to teleport you right back. I guess it wouldn't be necessary to include these teleporters that link back to the start room, but I felt like it was definitely cleaner and higher quality of life to include them. More professional, I suppose. Got to get the fireworks set up and ready to go and working. Got to be able to celebrate somewhere. Need at least a little bit of motivation to provide the player with any incentive to continue playing this horrendous masterpiece. Looks like I'm finally on to the start room. So I got just a basic little cozy bedroom set up in the bottom, and then like just simple stuff, some simple furnishings, lightings, the little title of the game, and a couple small contraptions here and there to get you introduced to the atmosphere of Gridlock, I guess. I wanted to figure out the best way to label it with a theme-fitting, easy-to-read font, which worked out really nice actually with the statues and echo coding. So with a border of adamantite walls and just a simple brick background behind the lettering, it stands out nicely, but it's not intrusive by any means, and I really like those colors together. Actually, the adamantite wall really fits well and works coolly with the general castle or stone or industrial medieval theme kind of. I don't know, I just said a lot of words there that don't necessarily go together, but you know what I'm aiming for roughly. Oh yeah, so after I finally got all that in, I basically went through and wanted to flesh out and somewhat busy up the whole game. So I got a whole bunch of different furniture things to throw in here and there to add character and color, but also to throw weird things off here and there to sort of distract from the actual clues and hints that you do need, just to add a little bit of obscurity and chaos to wade through to find the actual hints. And after doing this, I was walking around and looking around, and I realized I put way too much random junk everywhere. Like, why do I have all these potted plants everywhere all of a sudden? What is with all this random furniture? It definitely went way over the top. And so I went back through and took out a whole bunch of it shortly after this. It'll probably be included in here. But after doing that, it was down to a lot of testing and confirming everything was working, which honestly I'm still not confident that there's not some wires crossed here and there, but I do remember going through and testing each thing sequentially, so it should be fully functional. I guess we'll see exactly how much ends up being discovered needs fixed if anyone ever tries to play this But overall, it was a lot of fun to make, and hopefully it's fun for people to explore, although I have no confirmation that that's the case. So anyway, that's just about it for this time-lapse portion. I think I'm just running around planting some plants and rubbling it up a little bit. And then I do think I go through and do a bunch of cleanup because I cluttered it up way too much. But that pretty much covers the creation of Gridlock. Again, if you are interested at all, I really encourage you to go download Tigaria from the workshop and check it out yourself. See what you think. Are you able to work your way through it, or is it just not fun at all? I would love to know. Other than that, I really appreciate anyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it a little bit, and I hope you have an outstanding rest of your day.